A stat that's important to have versus some of your more competent players is raise versus c-bet. So it's all the times that you bet and they raise your continuation bet. And I like to have a sample size of over 20 samples to utilize this stat. Because a lot of times what will happen is someone will just hit a few strong hands in a row the first few times you c-bet versus them, and then they're going to raise you each time, of course, because they have a really strong hand. So we want to have a decent sample size before we start drawing conclusions, especially if we're going to take one of our marginal hands and flip it to a different category because of that stat. So in general, I think that if someone's raising 0 to 10%, they're mostly raising with nuts and strong draws. If they're between 10 and 20%, that means that they're going to be starting to mix in some pure bluffs and medium strength hands. If they're over 20%, I think that means that they're raising anytime they hit a piece of the board, basically. And I'm not exactly sure because I haven't really played versus too many of those opponents. So what you want to do to change your ranges to adapt to these opponents is versus tight players, when they raise your c-bet, you just fold all your good hands, except ones that are going to be ahead of the stronger hands in their range. And we're going to make a lot of money exploiting them there, because when we do the same thing to them, I'm not going to be able to fold those strong hands. If someone's playing the looser range, you're going to want a continuation bet less frequently, with the part of your range that you normally bet fold, but it does have some showdown value. So a lot of times betting a hand like middle pair is good on the flop because it offers good implied odds should we improve on the turn and river. But versus an opponent who's going to just raise you a lot, I would often check that hand back. Also, when one of these looser players just calls your c-bet, that means it's very unlikely that they have a very strong hand or draw because they raise all those hands. So you can value bet a lot thinner on the turn and river, and also bluff with a wider range. Another stat I like to have is when an opponent raises pre-flop and then doesn't continuation bet, how often they're check folding. And in my experience, most players fall into the tight range for this. And it makes sense because you want to bet the strongest parts of your range out of position. And then when you check, your range is pretty weak, so defending your checking range is pretty difficult to do profitably. So I like to have this in my HUD just so that I can refer to it if someone checks to me on the flop. It just gives me reassurance for when I'm just betting a total airball that I'm making a good play. So if someone's playing a tight strategy, you want to bet all of your air when they check to you. Then also bet, the strong parts of your range. There's just not a lot of money that you're going to make off an opponent when they check to you. And you want to just protect your hand. And also, in case they are going to check call, that usually is a weak hand, so you're getting a lot of value.